When they called, asking for bail money, I knew my granddaughter's voice, but something was very wrong. I was holding the phone with shaking hands, listening to what sounded exactly like my granddaughter Emma crying about a car accident in Mexico, when I noticed the clock on my kitchen wall. It was 2:47 in the afternoon on a Tuesday, and Emma should have been in her college chemistry lab 3 miles from my house, not sobbing to me from a foreign jail, asking for $8,000 in cash. My name is Dorothy Paulson, and I'm 68 years old. I live in a small ranch house in suburban Michigan, the same house my husband Frank and I bought in 1989. Frank passed away 6 years ago from a heart attack, sudden and brutal, leaving me alone except for my daughter Patricia and my granddaughter Emma, who's been the light of my life since the day she was born 20 years ago. I spent my career as a school librarian, retired now, and my days are simple. Morning coffee with the crossword puzzle, tending to my roses in the garden Frank planted, and twice weekly dinners with Emma, who lives in the dorm but comes home for my pot roast and to do her laundry. That Tuesday morning started like any other. I'd been up since 6, fed the neighbor's cat who likes to visit my porch, watered the impatiens in the window boxes. The September air was crisp, and the leaves were just starting to turn. I'd made myself a grilled cheese sandwich for lunch and was settling down to watch my afternoon soap opera when the phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, one of those long strings of digits that looked international, but I answered anyway. You never know when it might be important. Grandma? The voice was sobbing, hysterical, barely coherent, but I recognized it immediately. Emma. My Emma. Sweetheart, what's wrong? My heart started pounding. Every grandmother's worst nightmare. Your child, your grandbaby, in trouble and crying. Grandma, I'm so sorry, she wailed. I was in Mexico with some friends for a quick trip, and we got in a car accident. The other person is okay, but they arrested me, Grandma. They say I was driving recklessly, and I need bail money, or they're going to keep me here for weeks until the trial. Please, Grandma, please don't tell Mom. She'll be so disappointed in me. My mind was racing. Mexico? Emma had mentioned something weeks ago about maybe going on a trip, but I thought that was for spring break. And why wouldn't she want me to tell Patricia? How much do you need, honey? I asked, already mentally calculating what I had in my savings account. $8,000, she said through tears. I know it's a lot, but the lawyer here says that's what the bail is set at. They need it today, or they're transferring me to a different facility. $8,000? My voice came out small. That was nearly half of what I had left after paying for Frank's funeral expenses and the new roof last year. I'm going to put you on with the lawyer, Emma said. His name is Carlos Martinez. He'll explain everything. There was a shuffling sound, and then a male voice came on the line. Professional, calm, with a slight accent. Mrs. Paulson? This is Attorney Martinez. I'm representing your granddaughter Emma in this matter. I understand this is very distressing for you, but time is of the essence. The Mexican legal system is very different from yours in the United States. If we don't post bail by 5 p.m. today, Emma will be transferred to a state facility where she'll wait for trial, which could take months. Months? I felt dizzy. I'm afraid so. But we can avoid all of that if you can wire the bail money. I can give you the account information. Do you have Western Union nearby? That's when I noticed the clock. 2:47 p.m., Emma's chemistry lab ran from 2:30 to 4:30 every Tuesday and Thursday. I knew because I'd helped her pick her schedule last spring, and she'd complained about the late afternoon time slot interfering with her work schedule at the campus bookstore. Let me call you back, I said slowly. Mrs. Paulson, we really don't have time. I said I'll call you back. I hung up. My hands were still shaking as I dialed Emma's cell phone. It rang 4 times, then went to voicemail. I tried again. Same result. My breath was coming fast now, panic mixing with something else. A small, cold seed of doubt. I called Patricia at her office. She answered on the second ring, her voice cheerful. "Hi, Mom. What's up?" "Have you heard from Emma today?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Yeah, she texted me this morning. Some funny meme about chemistry lab." "Why? Is everything okay?" "Do you know where she is right now?" "Should be in her lab." "Mom, you're scaring me. What's going on?" "I need you to go to the college and find her, right now." "Mom?" "Please, Patricia, just do it. I'll explain later." I hung up and sat at my kitchen table, my heart hammering against my ribs. The phone rang again, the same international number. I let it go to voicemail. Then I did something Frank had taught me years ago when we'd gotten our first computer and he'd warned me about online scams. I went to my laptop and searched "Grandparent Scam, Mexico Bail Money." The results filled my screen. Article after article, news reports, FBI warnings, elderly people losing tens of thousands of dollars to scammers who impersonated their grandchildren. The phone rang again. I didn't answer. 23 minutes later, I watched every one of them tick by on that kitchen clock. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma's actual number. "Grandma, Mom just showed up at my lab freaking out." "What's happening? I'm fine. Call me." I called her immediately. She answered, confused and concerned. "Grandma? Mom said you sounded upset." "Someone just called me pretending to be you," I said. My voice was surprisingly calm now, though I was shaking all over. "They sounded exactly like you, Emma. Exactly. They said you were in jail in Mexico and needed $8,000 for bail." There was silence on the other end. Then, "Oh my God. Grandma, I've been in chemistry lab for the past hour. I'm standing here with my lab partner. We're looking at test tubes, not sitting in a Mexican jail." "Someone scammed you?" "They tried to," I said. "But I remembered what time your lab was." After I hung up with Emma, after Patricia called me back crying with relief, after my heart rate finally returned to normal, I sat in Frank's old recliner and thought about how close I'd come. If Emma's lab had been at a different time, if I hadn't known her schedule so well, if I'd been more panicked, less observant, I would have lost $8,000. Maybe more. But I didn't, and that made me angry. I called the police non-emergency number and filed a report. The officer who took my information, a kind young woman named Officer Chen, told me I'd done everything right. She said these scams were becoming more sophisticated, that they used AI now to clone voices from social media videos. She said most victims don't realize until after they've sent the money. "You're lucky," Officer Chen said, "and smart." But I didn't feel lucky. I felt targeted, violated. Someone had researched me, found my information, found Emma's voice somehow, and tried to exploit my love for my granddaughter to steal my money. The phone calls didn't stop. Over the next week, I received 3 more. Different scenarios. Emma in a car accident in Toronto. Emma arrested in Miami. Emma robbed in New York. Each time, I hung up immediately. Each time, I reported it. Then Patricia called me one evening, her voice tight with an emotion I couldn't quite identify. "Mom, we need to talk. Can I come over?" She arrived 20 minutes later with Emma. They both looked serious, almost uncomfortable. We sat in my living room, and Patricia pulled out a folder. "Mom, after what happened with the scam, Emma and I started talking about your finances, about how someone might have targeted you specifically, and we realized we don't actually know much about your situation. Dad handled everything, and after he died, you've been so private about it." I felt my back stiffen. "My finances are my business, Patricia." "I know, Mom. But what if you had sent that money? What if you'd been scammed? How would you have recovered? Do you even have enough for emergencies? For medical bills? What's your plan if you need assisted living someday?" Emma was staring at her hands, clearly uncomfortable with this conversation. "I'm fine," I said. "I have savings. I have Frank's pension and Social Security. I'm perfectly capable of managing my own affairs." Patricia exchanged a look with Emma. "Mom, I'm not trying to take over, but I think it would be smart for us to sit down with a financial advisor, just to make sure everything is protected, to make sure you're set up to avoid situations like this. Maybe we could even set up power of attorney, so if something happens—" "No." The word came out harder than I intended. Patricia blinked. "Mom?" I said no. I appreciate your concern, but I'm 68 years old, not 98. I don't need someone managing my money or my decisions. I almost got scammed, yes, but I didn't, because I was smart enough to catch it. That doesn't mean I'm incompetent. That's not what I'm saying. Isn't it? I stood up. I'm not some doddering old woman who can't handle her own affairs. I'm your mother. I raised you. I worked for 40 years. I managed a household and a budget and a family. I think I can handle my own checking account." Patricia stood too, her face flushed. "Dad always handled the money, Mom. You don't even know how to invest. What happens when that savings runs out? Have you thought about that?" "Of course I have." "Then why won't you let me help?" "Because I don't need help." Emma stood up, her hands raised. "Okay, let's all just calm down. Grandma, Mom's just worried. After the scam thing, we're all worried. We love you. That's all this is." But it wasn't. I could see it in Patricia's eyes. That look, the one I'd seen in the eyes of Emma's lawyer on the phone. The one that says, "You're old. You're vulnerable. You're easy to take advantage of." They left shortly after, the air between us cold and strained. I locked the door behind them and went back to Frank's chair. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the scam call, about Patricia's words, about the way Emma couldn't look me in the eye, and I realized something that made my stomach turn to ice. How did the scammers know to call me? How did they know about Emma? How did they get my phone number? Not the landline Frank always insisted we keep, but my new cell number I'd only given to family. I got up and went to my computer. I searched for information on grandparent scams, reading article after article about how they worked, and that's when I found it, buried in a Reddit thread about elder financial abuse. Sometimes, the thread said, these scams aren't random. Sometimes family members provide the information to the scammers in exchange for a cut of the money. They target their own relatives, knowing they're more likely to fall for it if the voice sounds right, if the details are accurate, if the desperation feels real. No. I pushed the thought away. Patricia wouldn't. Emma wouldn't. But the seed was planted. The next morning, I made a call to a lawyer I'd found online, a woman named Stephanie Morrison who specialized in elder law. I told her I wanted to update my will, set up protections for my assets, and make sure no one could manipulate me or my finances. Smart, she said, especially after an attempted scam. Do you have any concerns about family members? I hesitated. I'm not sure. That's okay, she said. We can set things up so that you maintain complete control. No one gets power of attorney unless you're medically incapacitated, and even then, it would go to a professional trustee, not a family member. We can also set up your will so that your assets are protected, with clear distributions that can't be contested. I like that, I said. Over the next 2 weeks, I worked with Stephanie. We set up a revocable trust. We updated my will. We created healthcare directives. We established clear boundaries around my finances that would keep them protected, no matter what happened. I didn't tell Patricia. I didn't tell Emma. And then, 3 weeks after the first scam call, my phone rang again. This time, it wasn't Emma's voice. It was Patricia's. "Mom?" She was crying, hysterical. "Mom, there's been an accident. Emma's car. She's in the hospital. They're saying she needs emergency surgery, but the insurance isn't covering it all. They need $10,000 up front, or they won't operate. Mom, please, I don't have that much liquid. Can you help? They're saying if we don't do the surgery in the next hour, she could have permanent damage." My blood ran cold, not with fear, with certainty. "Which hospital?" I asked calmly. "St. Mary's. Mom, please hurry." I hung up and called Emma's cell phone. She answered on the first ring. "Hey, Grandma, what's up?" "Where are you right now?" "At work, at the bookstore. My shift started an hour ago. Why?" "Is your mother with you?" "What? No, she's at work. Grandma, you're being weird." I hung up and called Patricia's office. Her assistant answered. "Patricia Paulson's office. Is Patricia available?" "I'm sorry, she's in a meeting with a client. Can I take a message?" So Patricia was at work, not at a hospital with Emma. The phone rang again. The same number that had just called me claiming to be Patricia. I answered it. "Mrs. Paulson?" A male voice this time. "This is Dr. Richardson at St. Mary's. I just spoke with your daughter about your granddaughter's surgery." "You're a liar," I said clearly. "And a criminal. I'm reporting this to the police." Again. I hung up. But this time, something was different. This time, they'd used Patricia's voice. Or something that sounded exactly like Patricia's voice. Which meant they had access to her voice somehow. From a voicemail, maybe. Or a video. Or... I called Stephanie Morrison back. "I need to move faster on those protections," I said. "Something's wrong. I don't know what, but something's very wrong." That evening, I got a call from a number I actually recognized, Patricia's cell phone. I answered carefully. "Mom?" Her voice was strained. "We need to talk. In person. Now." "About what?" "Just, please come to my house. It's important." When I arrived at Patricia's house 30 minutes later, Emma was there too. They were both sitting at the kitchen table, with their faces pale. A laptop open between them. "Mom?" Patricia said. "Someone's been scamming us. Using our voices. There have been 3 attempts on you in the past month. And today? Today, someone called my boss pretending to be you, saying I'd had a family emergency and embezzled money to cover it. My boss called me in a panic. I had to prove I was at work, that you were fine, that the whole thing was fake." Emma was crying silently. "And someone called my financial aid office saying I'd dropped out, and they wanted my refund check sent to a different address. Grandma, someone is targeting our whole family." I sat down heavily. "I know." "You know?" Patricia stared at me. "I've been getting the calls. I reported them. I didn't want to worry you." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because..." I stopped. How could I explain the suspicion that had been growing in me? The terrible, awful possibility that maybe Patricia or Emma had been involved. Patricia's face changed as she read my expression. "You thought it was me?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "You thought I was scamming you?" "No?" "Yes, you did. That's why you've been so cold the past few weeks. That's why you shut down when I tried to talk about your finances. You thought I was trying to take your money." Emma was staring at me with wide eyes, shocked. "I didn't know what to think," I said. "Someone had information, details, your voices. How else could they get all that?" "Social media, Mom!" Patricia stood up, her voice rising. "We all have social media. We all post things. Our voices are out there. Our information is out there. There are entire programs now that can clone voices from just a few seconds of audio." "You really thought your own daughter, your own granddaughter, would steal from you?" I almost got scammed for $8,000, I said, my voice rising too. And then you showed up trying to get access to my finances. What was I supposed to think? That I love you, that I was worried about you, that I wanted to help protect you. Patricia was crying now. Instead, you thought I was some criminal trying to rob you? Do you have any idea how that feels? Emma had her face in her hands. This is so messed up. The room fell silent except for Patricia's quiet crying. I felt something inside me crack open, a terrible realization of what I'd allowed my fear and suspicion to do. I'm sorry, I whispered. I'm so sorry. You're right. I should have trusted you. I should have known you would never hurt me. But Patricia didn't respond. She just stared at me with devastated eyes. Mom, she said finally, I think you need help, professional help. This level of paranoia, this suspicion of your own family, it's not normal. Maybe it's grief. Maybe it's the stress of Dad being gone. But you need to talk to someone. I'm not paranoid, I said, but even as I said it, I wondered. Was I? Had the scam attempts broken something in me? Made me see threats where there were none? The police eventually caught the scammers, a ring of criminals operating out of a call center in India, using stolen information from data breaches and social media to target elderly Americans. They'd hit dozens of people. I wasn't special. I was just another mark on their list. Patricia and I went to family therapy. It took months, but slowly, we rebuilt the trust I'd shattered. Emma forgave me more quickly, with the resilience of youth, but I could see in her eyes that something had changed. She looked at me differently now, more carefully, like I was fragile. Maybe I was. I kept the legal protections Stephanie Morrison had helped me set up. Not because I didn't trust my family, but because the scammers had taught me something important. The world is full of people who will try to take advantage of you. And sometimes, in trying to protect yourself, you hurt the people you love most. But I also learned something else. I learned that fear is its own kind of prison. That suspicion can destroy relationships just as surely as theft destroys bank accounts. That sometimes the greatest scam isn't the one that takes your money. It's the one that takes your trust, your love, your connection to the people who matter most. I'm 68 years old. I live alone in a house that's too big for me now, with a garden that Frank planted and roses that bloom every summer. I have a daughter who still calls me every Sunday, even after I almost destroyed our relationship with my suspicions. I have a granddaughter who still comes for pot roast, even though dinner is sometimes awkward now. And I have my money, all of it, untouched by scammers, protected by lawyers, sitting in accounts that no one can access but me. But I also know the truth. None of that money matters as much as the relationships I almost lost trying to protect it. The scammers didn't win. But I didn't win either. Because in the end, the real loss wasn't the money they tried to steal. It was the trust I gave away for free, destroyed by my own fear and suspicion. That's the part they don't tell you about scams. They don't just steal your money. They steal your peace, your certainty, your faith in other people. And sometimes, if you're not careful, they steal your family too. Not through theft, but through the fear of theft. That's the real crime, and it's the one I almost committed myself. I'm Dorothy Paulson. I'm 68 years old, and I learned the hard way that protecting yourself doesn't mean pushing everyone away. It means finding the balance between wisdom and trust, between caution and love, between keeping yourself safe and staying open to the people who genuinely care about you. It's a balance I'm still learning. Every day. One pot roast dinner at a time.